Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. If I can have your attention, please. We're going to be getting started in about 5 minutes, so if you can begin to find your seats, we will begin to prepare our program for today. Good morning. I am Pastor Terrell Jones of Renovation Life Church, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies for today. I want to say welcome and thank you so much for coming out to join us for today's 2024 Martin Luther King Jr. Community Breakfast. If you came out and you braved the cold, you're committed to the cause, and we're glad to see you all have come out today to join us. We have come together to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, a great man who made a great impact and continues to make that great impact through each one of you. As is appropriate in our title for today, Unity in Times Like These, the scripture says men ought always to pray and not faint. And I think it's a great time for us to take a moment and pray. We're going to ask if Reverend Rosalind Morris from Schaefer Chapel AME Church would come and lead us in prayer.
Let's bow our heads. Most gracious God, we thank you for another day in your presence. We thank you how you got us here safe and sound. While it may be cold on the outside, we ask you to warm us up on the inside with your spirit of love, your spirit of unity, your spirit of fellowship, your spirit of togetherness, oh God. You said in your word, a house divided cannot stand. So help us, oh God, to take a stand for you. Help us to do it on one accord. To help us to do it on one mind. So Lord, help us not to do it in chaos and confusion, but do it in a power and a spirit of agreement, oh God. Help us to leave out, oh God, clothed in your majesty. Help us to leave out with clarity and new vision, new understanding, but most of all, what to do for our city. Lord, what are you calling us to in this season? And Lord, we will be so gracious on today to give you the glory in it, the honor in it, and the praise in it. In Jesus' name, amen.
And we're going to turn it over to those officiating the breakfast for today so that they can dismiss your tables. Good morning, everyone. Let's get some enthusiasm. Good morning, everyone. All right, that's it. So we will be releasing these tables up front. After that, this gentleman right here will release the other tables out in the foyer, okay? So I appreciate it. If you get up and mingle, just watch everybody so we can keep everything moving forward. Keep everything flowing, okay? Thank you. For today, feel free to continue eating your breakfast as we proceed with our program. We want to say thank you to Ball State for catering our breakfast for them. With our breakfast for today. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties, but at this time we're going to continue with the program, and we're going to ask for Pastor Robert Scape to come and give us our official greetings and acknowledgement of elected officials.
I'm just going to do just that. I'm going to greet you all on behalf of the concerned clergy and the Dr. King Dream Team Committee. We greet you all. Thank you for coming out. This is a really good crowd, and we're excited and glad that you are all joining us this morning. At this time, I just want to acknowledge all of our elected officials. If you could please stand to your feet so we can honor you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Scaife. At this time, we're going to ask Dr. Anand Mari, Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Ball State, to come and give us an official welcome.
Good morning, everyone. President Mearns is unable to join us today, and he sends his regrets. But that means I have the great fortune to welcome you to this event. As I look around the room, I see so many friendly faces, but not all of them are familiar faces. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Anand Mari, Provost and Executive Vice President here, and I was formerly a Dean of Teachers College here. And before that, I was a Dean at the University of Rochester, and I served at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, heading their economic and community development. But my most memorable and the hardest job I've had is serving as high school social studies teacher and English as a foreign language teacher in San Jose, California. My career is varied and literally covers coast to coast with a good helping of the Midwest. I'm a husband, father, and son. I'm also an immigrant who came to the United States with his parents at the age of 9 without a working knowledge of English. My colleagues are used to hear me say that I won the educational lottery, and I did. But I know that those odds were greatly improved because of the work of Dr. King and his contemporaries in the civil rights movement. We gathered this morning to celebrate Dr. King and to demonstrate our continuing commitment to equity and inclusion, and this morning's theme of unity in times like these. It was February 1961 at a speech on the campus of New York University where Dr. King said, "Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concerns of dedicated individuals. The journey to this point was not easy. It required determination, resilience, and persistence. We only need to consult any media outlet to see that there is still tremendous suffering and struggle in our nation and across the globe. Ball State's efforts to honor Dr. King's legacy can be traced back to a proclamation brought forth by our students and signed by President Worthen in January of 1985, which helped to create a Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Celebration during our Unity Week. In the early 1990s, our student government formally asked our faculty to include discussions of Dr. King's teachings and life in their classes to celebrate this holiday. The university is committed to equity and inclusion in our policies, our teachings, and our actions with each other and our community. And certainly, we recognize the need for greater unity, especially in times like these. We owe it to our students who initially sought Dr. King's recognition, and we owe it to our students today and in the future. Greater unity can come through a better informed and more empathetic citizenry who can engage in meaningful and civil discussions. That is one reason we are so grateful for the opportunities presented by our Cardinals Vote campaign grant that was announced earlier this month. With funding from the Community Engaged Alliance, the Cardinals Vote campaign will help empower our students and community members through an active and engaged civic participation project. The campaign is a partnership project to advance nonpartisan civic engagement across the university and Muncie. It would help us promote knowledge and skills needed to navigate the complexities of engaged citizenship. We know the progress Dr. King spoke of is not complete. There's much work that remains to be done. But as I look across this room on this day and reflect who I am and the privilege that I hold as an immigrant and a person of color to serve as the provost and executive vice president of this wonderful university, I am confident that our passion and dedication will help us reach the goals of equity and unity. Dr. King also noted that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Today, as we commemorate Dr. King and his legacy, we are once again inspired by his unwavering commitment to service to others, even as we must ask ourselves, what are we doing for others? Dr. King knew that the fight for justice and equality was connected to our collective service to those in need. Today, as we take time with our community to reflect on Dr. King's legacy, we also heed his call to action. We can continue his legacy by continuing to collaborate. I encourage you to seek out opportunities in the community, in your places of worship and learning, and among your family and neighbors to collaborate. Remember that collaboration is more than cooperation. We can cooperate with each other, but not achieve anything. It is through collaboration that we reach our goals and better ourselves and our community. We can continue Dr. King's legacy by seeking to understand differences and our similarities and by celebrating the same. Interestingly, I find that what makes me different from you, for example, my cultural heritage or my immigrant status, makes me as strong, empathetic, and committed to our community as do my similarities with you. And if we take the time to look, we'll find many similarities. There's room to celebrate and rejoice in both. Thank you again for being here today and for your commitment to Dr. King's ideals and our community.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. At this time, we're going to have a proclamation from the Honorable Mayor, Dan Ridenour.
Good morning and welcome. You know, it's exciting to see the City of Muncie and Delaware County and Ball State University and all the other organizations, including the concerned clergy, put this together, and to see, when you're standing up here, you can see a full room, and it's wonderful that we are here to celebrate the life of someone who's had quite the impact from decades ago, and it's still there. So I get the honor to read a proclamation from the City of Muncie. Proclamation. Whereas Monday, January 15th, 2024, will mark the observance of the national holiday honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and work. And whereas the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of this creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And whereas Dr. King fought against barriers that prohibit the rights and limit opportunities of any person regardless of race, creed, or color. And whereas he led a nonviolent movement that summoned all kinds of people, people of color, white, rich, poor, regardless of race, creed, or color, and it helps to stimulate the moral consciousness of America. And whereas the United States of America and the city of Muncie celebrate the life and achievements of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as a federal holiday marking his birthday, and whereas today we embrace the 2024 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. theme, Unity in Times Like These. And our important role is bringing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of activating the beloved community here in Muncie, Indiana. Now, therefore, I, Honorable Dan Ridenour, Mayor of this great city of Muncie, Indiana, proclaim Monday, January 15th, 2024, as Unity in Times Like These Day in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we're going to have a musical selection from America's Hometown Jazz Combo. If you could come at this time.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. My name is George Wolf. I'm Professor Emeritus in the School of Music at Ball State. Retired in, well, maybe I shouldn't tell you the year I retired because I don't know. It's been a few years. I try to stay active. But I was also director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies for 4 years while I was here at Ball State, teaching for 32 years. I want to begin by thanking the MLK Dream Team and Paris McCurdy and Latasha Barnes-Griffin in particular for inviting me to perform and us to perform here this morning for you. Also want to acknowledge the Mayor's office. Thank you for your support. And Mr. Roger McConnell, who is the founder and executive director of America's Hometown Band, who makes it possible for us to be here. First piece we're going to play is a spiritual, which may be familiar to many of you, called Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. And I'm chosen to perform it because there are a lot of motherless children in the world today, caused by violence, caused by wars, caused by the separation of families at our southwest border, caused by gun violence. And it's important. When I was director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, I made it a point to show how the arts play such an important role in calling public attention to injustice. Mahatma Gandhi, who influenced Martin Luther King a great deal, said that if we're going to create a groundswell of support for social political change, we first have to make the injustice visible. And so it is in that spirit of musical activism that we perform. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Wow, what an amazing performance. Clap your hands again for them. It was very, very moving performance. And we want to say thank you to Mr. Wolf and the American Jazz Combo. At this time, we're going to have MLK Youth Recognition. And we're going to ask Mrs. Rhonda Ward, Dr. Lee. This is the wrong? Yeah. Dr. D. Bell. And also Mr. Jim Williams to come and do our recognitions. We have one correction. Bishop O'Neill is going to come and step in for Mr. Jim Williams.
Good morning. Dr. K would like for me to share her regrets with you as she is helping her mother who's under the weather right now. So it's an honor to be here today. On behalf of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Planning Committee, superintendents, and school corporation CEOs throughout Delaware County, I would like to congratulate all of the top academic students throughout Delaware County. The students being recognized this morning are all seniors and were selected for this honor due to their outstanding academic achievement. When I call each student's name, I would like for the student to come forward to receive their certificate from Miss Rhonda Ward and Bishop Keith O'Neill, who is also the Vice President of the Muncie Community School Board. Also, I would like for the parents and administrators of the students to stand as well. Burris Laboratory, principal is Dr. Abby Comer. Our first student is Nicholas Dosh. If his parents would stand, please. Picture. Our next student is Nicholas McDonald. Our next student is Zoe Ogle. Our next student is Emma Whittick. For Delville Junior Senior High School, Principal Mr. Eric Douglas. Our first student is Luke Carmen. Parents, please stand. We want to recognize you as well. Awesome. Our next student is Emerson Eichhorn. Our next student is Tristan Peevler. Delta High School, Principal Chris Conley. Our first student from Delta we're recognizing is Jacob Bilby, and he will be, his grandfather will stand with him, please. Our next student is Corbin King. Our next student is Nicole Southerland. Our next student is Braden Stanley. We will now recognize students from Muncie Central High School. Principal, Mr. Chris Walker. Our first student from Muncie Central is Waverly Daughtery. Our next student is Ferris Elkatalbi. Our next student is Ezra Fuller. Our next student is Taj Isom. We'll now recognize students from Wapahani High School, Principal Mark Fahy. Our first student is Madeline Jefferson. Our next student is Lillian Neal. Emily Thompson. Landon Weller, for Yorktown High School, Principal Miss Stacy Brewer. We have Caitlin LaFerny. Mason Moulton. Have we missed any students that may not checked in? Okay. Let us give all of our Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. top academic students one final applause. Congratulations.
Congratulations again to all of our students. Also, we want to recognize President Mern's wife did come in, so we want to acknowledge her, say thank you for joining us in this place. As we proceed with the program, I'm going to give you about 3 instructions in one. We're going to have the introduction of our speaker by Dr. Anand Mari. Afterwards, there will be a musical selection again from Mr. Wolf and the America Hometown Jazz, after which the voice you will hear is the voice of our keynote speaker. So we're going to ask you to come in that order at this time.
Hello again. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, someone I'm pleased to call a colleague and a friend, Dr. John Anderson. Dr. Anderson earned a degree in psychology from Skyline College in San Bruno, California, before earning a bachelor's degree from Indiana Wesleyan University. He earned his master's and doctoral degrees from Ball State University, with majors in sociology and adult and community education. He has taught for Ivy Tech's School of Public and Social Service, and he routinely teaches courses for Ball State's Department of Sociology, including Black Sociology, Globalization, and Introduction to Race and Ethnic Relations. His other professional experiences include serving as the director of the Western Addition Beacon Center of the YMCA of San Francisco, as well as the coordinator of the Hamilton Rec Connect program. Currently, Dr. Anderson serves as the director of the Ryan Family Scholars and Navigator program. The Ryan's Family Navigator program serves as a hub for student support and provides student success, coaching, academic, career, and professional development workshops, and as a campus resource for support for all teaching majors, particularly those who are the first in their family to attend college and or have challenging financial backgrounds. John's LinkedIn profile notes his Gallup strengths find the themes, including strategic and connectedness. According to Gallup, people who are exceptionally talented in the strategic theme create alternative ways to proceed. Faced with any given scenario, they can quickly spot the relevant patterns and issues. And connectedness means that John builds strong relationships that hold a team together and make it greater than the sum of its parts. I think you will see why these are the case with Dr. Anderson. As noted before John joins us at the podium, we'll have a performance by America's hometown jazz combo, and at the conclusion of the musical, please welcome Dr. John Anderson.
Well, before we play our second piece, I want to introduce the musicians, which I have the pleasure and honor of performing with this morning. We have Dr. Robert Willey on piano. Dr. Willey is Associate Professor of Music in the School of Music at Ball State. And we have Michael Santos on electric bass. Michael is from Florida, and he acknowledges he's not used to this cold weather. But he's a graduate assistant in the Jazz Studies program in the School of Music. We're going to play for our next piece a piece by saxophonist Charlie Parker entitled Now is the Time. I selected this composition because Martin Luther King uses the phrase, now is the time, 5 times in his I Have a Dream speech. He says, for example, now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Words that seem extremely relevant 60 years from the time he initially gave the speech. It turns out that Dr. Martin Luther King loved jazz and appreciated its culturally significant role it played in the African American freedom movement. He viewed jazz musicians as being ahead of their time. It is believed by some that he used the phrase now is the time in many of his speeches to pay homage to the progressive jazz musicians of the 40s and 50s. Jazz had grown in popularity since the mid-1920s, and in the 1930s, jazz bands toured across America, playing for white privileged audiences in the dance halls. Jazz during this period was primarily a form of entertainment. But in the mid-1940s, jazz went through a transition and ushered in a new style of jazz known as bebop. The instrumentation now consisted mostly of small combos, usually of 4 or 5 performers, and the music evolved to be a form of protest. The failed separate but equal policies institutionalized by the United States Supreme Court in the case of Plessy versus Ferguson permeated the awareness of jazz musicians, especially when African American soldiers came home from fighting fascism in World War II, to realize they did not have the freedoms in their home country that they were fighting for overseas. The tempos of this new bebop style of jazz were often not suitable for dancing, and the emphasis on complex rhythms and extended individual improvisation were a clear departure from the expectations associated with European symphonic music. Jazz musicians found artistic freedom in the context of exploring a cultural aesthetic that had its roots in African music. In addition, Jewish, black, and white musicians were more frequently performing together, as exemplified by the quartet of Benny Goodman, Lionel Hampton, Teddy Wilson, and Gene Krupa. If you're over 70 years old, you might recognize some of those names. The musical performance of jazz became an expression of diversity that was contrary to the segregationist expectations of the time. So we will now perform Now is the Time by Charlie Parker, and when you hear the recitation of I Have a Dream speech, you can listen to those words in his speech.
Once again, great job to Mr. Wolf and the American Jazz Combo. If you weren't dancing up on your feet, you were dancing inside. I saw Pastor Neil Crane bouncing his feet in the mayor, so I know you wanted to get up and dance. Maybe we'll have him come back right at the end and you can dance out. At this time, we're going to have the MLK committee recognition with Watasha Barnes-Griffith, MLK Dream Team Chair and CEO of the YWCA, and Mr. John Beatty. I'm sure you know him. Oh, I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead. It was so good. I'm sorry. At this time, Mr. John Anderson, our keynote speaker.
How many know timing is everything? Yeah. And I was wondering how this was going to work, coming up behind the band, and I appreciate the foundation that was laid, just in terms of contextualization of time. But I'm really honored to have the opportunity to share with you and to be asked by Sister Watasha to share with you all. And she asked me to share with you all from the perspective of being a transplant from the San Francisco Bay Area to Muncie, Indiana. And she had the opportunity to hear some of my story whenever I had the privilege to facilitate the executive board retreat for the Muncie Black Chamber of Commerce. And I guess she stewed with that for a while, and then she asked me to share with you all. This has come full circle for me in preparing to share my thoughts with you all. Was really quite emotional, and so I brought my it's supposed to be to wipe your mouth, but it may be wiping tears at some point. But I'm going to try and hold it together. Thank you all so much for allowing me some time to share with you all. Just before I get started, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my better half. Sharice Anderson, stand up, Sharice. We've been married 18 years. We'll hit 19 in July, and and we've been married more time in Indiana than we have been both from where we're from. And it's interesting because my transplant here to Muncie, it was challenging. The house that even before we set foot on the grounds, I don't know but I had come from Mount Zion Hospital in the Fillmore of San Francisco. Fillmore is a historic African-American district in San Francisco. It's probably the functional equivalent of Harlem in New York. Rich jazz tradition, black leadership, rich comes out of the Fillmore. But I came from Mount Zion Hospital to a house in Daly City, California. And so the first 30 years of my life, from the hospital to that house, all in that house. I was raised in that house. At some point, I purchased the house from my mom and began raising my family in that house. And right around 2007, we had put our house on the market because we were intending to relocate. And the whole 2007-2008 housing crisis, we were part of that. And so we had the house on the market about a year and a half. Adjusted the price 3 different times, didn't move, and we lost the house. in foreclosure. And then it gets better. Sharice and we close out both our retirements and move to Muncie, Indiana. And I don't know, one of the things that I've recognized is that Muncie, Indiana has a magnetic pull. It has a way of drawing people from all over the globe. One of the reasons is obviously Ball State University. At one point, manufacturing boom, corporations were here, and so that quite naturally had a magnetic pull. But even despite all of that, there's still magnetic pulls. My pull to Muncie initially was from a dreamer in ministry. He's no longer with us. He's made his transition, Bishop Michael Milden. Yeah. He's a prolific thinker, high intellectual. We vibed on so many levels in terms of sameness. Our approaches to ministry were very similar in terms of what it could be, what it should accomplish. And that was my initial draw to Muncie, Indiana. And then after about 3 years, because I thought my entire time here was for ministry, to spend some time with Bishop Mike and his wife, Pastor Denise. And then when we felt like our time was up, and we said, okay, now it's time to go. Where are we going? And I was struggling because, after we had moved on, about 6 months had gone by, and I was like, oh no. The initial pull, that the reason I came, it served its purpose, and I was looking to leave. And there was no exit door. And so it was like, now what? And one of the things that, Sharice and I had did was, because that was the initial pull, we thought that was the entire definition of our reason for being here. And so at some point we had to come into the understanding that we needed to occupy until we got our next move. It was funny because we had went to the baptism at the invitation of a friend acquaintance for his son's baptismal, and that was the first time I had opportunity to hear Bishop Keith preach. And he had talked about Muncie has there's great things for Muncie, and he was talking about how you could be suspended, one theory says this kind of liminal space where you just feel like you're in between, you know you're going to land somewhere, but the liminal space, you being caught in between is like, all right, come on, land. And there's a way in which when you're in that kind of in between space, you've got to figure out how to make the most of it. You've got to figure out how to be productive. And so when he said that, Sharice and I got home. I said, "Did you hear that?" She said, "Yeah, I heard it." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then I started exploring. Muncie has a lot of nestled treasures if you're diligent to look them up and seek them out. And that's what I had to do. I never thought I'd be teaching in higher education until I got to Muncie. Before I got to Muncie, I had interest and ambition to be a college basketball coach. At some point during my coaching career, I had walked away from the game altogether, cold turkey. Didn't watch it on TV. Left my coaching job at the Catholic high school that I was coaching at the time, and I never thought I'd come back. And it wasn't until 2 years ago, or last season, I believe, that the opportunity to come back to coaching presented itself. I've got a portion of my Northside boys here. Boys, would you stand? Yeah. It's a rare group, and the opportunity to come back to coaching was through Coach Tara Gudger, who serves as athletic director at Northside. Tara, you here? Where's Tara? Yeah, that's it. Stand up. There you go. Muncie has this magnetic pull for whatever the reasons are. And so we talk, the theme is unity in times like these. And so some questions emerge, like what are the times? What are the times? How do we understand times? Muncie at one point was heavily defined by plant manufacturing, automotive plants and parts and whatever. But Muncie, Indiana, one of the times that we're in a time of great transition, have been since I've been here and been able to observe, and probably before we ever got here in 2008, that transition time started. It's a great opportunity. Transition offers the opportunity for redefinition, reimagining, redefining. And as we embark on that, it's important that we seize this opportunity to allow for everybody to have an opportunity to add to the definition, the reimagination that's happening in this particular locality. One of the things whenever I started my master's degree in sociology, boys, when you're giving a speech, it's not a good idea to pick your water up, but if you have to, you have to. You don't do that. Reinvention, reimagining, redefining this time of transition. It's an opportune time to include as many people in that redefining, reimagining. Muncie has a magnetic pull, and that didn't go away with the corporations. Muncie has this magnetic pull. I remember Bishop Milton would say, Muncie is the center of the universe in his own way. And what he essentially was saying is that Muncie has a magnetic pull. When I was earning my sociology master's, I had the good fortune of being a graduate assistant for AHEC, and AHEC's office was in at the time it was called Building Better Communities Center. Anybody familiar with that? And I had the opportunity to come across a gentleman. He just made his transition November, December sometime, Mr. Dick Waple, out of that office, Building Better Communities. It's now Indiana Communities Institute, and they put on the statewide, really regional-wide, Indiana Economic Development Academy or Institute. As a graduate assistant, I had the good fortune of being scholarshiped into that week-long academy. And it was there I was introduced to the economic model, primacy of place. Anybody familiar with that? Primacy of place, quality of place. And the economic development model, that economic development model is different from the traditional economic development model that tries to attract companies and corporations to define any particular locality. Quality of place seeks to attract talent, human potential, and to create an environment or a locality or a space where folks feel like they can live, work, and play in that particular locality. So rather than the focus being on attracting corporations, it's building out the environment in such a way where people say, you know what, I want to live there. And I like that model, but there's only one thing missing. You should build out an environment where people are attracted to relocate there to where they can live there, work there, play there, and dream there. When Martin Luther King is on, and when he's at the Lincoln Memorial, and he gives his I Have a Dream speech, it really wasn't the I Have a Dream speech. That was after the fact. It got branded that. The story behind that is, some might say the Queen of Gospel, Mahalia Jackson, is behind him, and she would travel with Dr. Martin Luther King for many of his speeches and conferences. I remember Pastor Lay at First Apostolic Church in San Francisco. It was a small corner church, and he'd say, we wouldn't have many musicians on salary, any musicians on salary or anything like that. It was a small corner church, and he said, "I'm gonna sing till the singers get here." I asked him one time. I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" "Well, Brother John, you don't just go right into what you got to say or teach or preach." He said, "Sometimes you got to chase some of them demons out of there." And that's some Pentecostal phraseology for those of you. And he say, and so Mahalia Jackson was a companion to Dr. King, kind of along in that same fashion. I've seen social media clips where Dr. King takes the podium and she just by prophetic unction, comes into a song. And he steps back from the podium and lets her have her do kind of in that same, you got to set the setting. And so she's traveling with him, obviously, to Washington, D.C., and they're at the Lincoln Memorial, and he's in his speech. And some might say, well, he might have been missing the mark, and she had something to say. That's one take on it. Another take on it could be, now that you've said this little piece, tell them about the dream. And that's what she did. She very, when you get people who are in tune with you, they have a way of communicating with you and like, come on, get it together. You know that. Or get this piece said. And that's what she did. And historians record how he's at the podium and he's moving through his speech and she just blurts out, tell them about the dream, Martin. And when you're truly connected with someone and they know who you are at your core, they have a way of speaking to you, and you just step right in. And that's what he did. And he said maybe a few words before that, and he stepped right into, I have a dream. He had test run that speech maybe a couple months before in Detroit at Cobo Hall, where he gave the I have a dream speech. And apparently that resonated with Mahalia so much that it needed to be said at that particular time. And so this is a moment that comes full circle for me, the opportunity to share what it means to live, work, play, and dream in Muncie from the standpoint of a transplant from San Francisco. I just want to share with you a couple thoughts. A couple questions that work from the theme unity in times like these. How am I doing on time? Thank you. So what are the times? For Muncie, Indiana, the Midwest, it's a time of transition, as I mentioned. It's a time of reinvention. It's a time of redefining aspects of our way of life, culturally and socially. It's a time of reimagining in the sense that we engage in a level of creativity apart from fear and limitations. I've had the misfortune of being a part of meetings where ideas are brought to the table and so much, but what about? And what if? And there's a way in which if you're talking about transformational change, you need to have the space, the time and space to dream without limitation. Just let your imagination run wild. One of the things that, coaching the boys at Northside, I've tried to plant seeds, seeds that hopefully materialize into their own type of dreams. I want to tell you, this team at Northside, this cohort of ball players typically come through a school district about 3-5 years spans. This is a special group of boys at Northside who could potentially bring back a state championship to Muncie, Indiana. Last year, my nephew came to visit me, and he's a basketball coach. My brother, and my nephew, a basketball coach at a local high school back in San Bruno, California. He came to visit me because he was for a wedding in Detroit. He says, Uncle John, I'm coming to see you. I'm in Detroit. That's got to be about like 3 hours. He said, I can't be in this part of the country and not do that. I said, well, okay, what am I going to do? He's coming. I'm not prepared for him. And so they like my fried chicken, so we fried him up some chicken and some other stuff. And then I took him to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, which is right there in Newcastle. This was maybe 3 weeks before the start of the season. And when I went there, I saw the rich history of Muncie, Indiana, and high school basketball. And I was like, wow. One of the things that I came back and I talked with Coach Gudger. I said, I'd like to take the 7th and 8th grade boys to the Hall of Fame. I said, they need to see that Muncie Central Shrine so that they can begin to dream and imagine, what their time at Muncie Central could be like. And I thought about, so we took them there. And then one of the other things that we did, once the season was over, a handful of boys who were in regular contact with me, I said, let's go to the state finals. Let's go to the class finals that Muncie Central competes in. And when we got to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, I said, when we go in there, boys, I want you to see yourself on the floor. Just dream without limitation. See yourself on the floor. See yourself on the court, and what that might mean for you. Just planting seeds. That's what you do, dreamers. And it's weird because they talk about energy and connectedness. Our principal at Northside made arrangements for us to play in conjunction with the Indiana Pacers. The boys had a chance to play on that floor a few weeks ago. Again, dreaming without limitations, seeing what it feels like. And so I remember in the pregame, I was pulling different ones over. I said, hey, notice what the floor feels like. Notice how tight the rims are. There's little give. You got to shoot with accuracy if you want to score in this type of venue. I said, now that's the reason why we have the reduced rims on top of our rims at Northside. They don't like that. But preparing them to compete, it's one thing to dream, but it's another thing to mobilize and take action to move toward those dreams. And these have been some of the things that we've tried to do. And this year, Coach Gudger and I are strategizing in ways in which to get the whole team, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, to see that state finals and to plant those seeds of dreaming in a larger fashion. And so I'm excited about that. But to dream without limitation, those are some of the times that we're in. The other question, as I work from this theme, how do we understand time? How do we understand time? We just had some really formal instruction about keeping time as it pertains to music. In the Greek lexicon, there are 2 words for time: chronos, the measure of quantitative time or exact time. We get the word chronology from that Greek root word. The word is sequential in nature. Chronos carries with it a high level of predictability and expectation of a particular outcome at a particular or specific time. Sequential in nature. At 9 o'clock, we expect to get the program moving. Those who work from that chronos frame. Kairos, the second Greek word for time, is defined as the right time or the opportune time. Has to do more with timing, opportunities, or season. And it requires an understanding of what to do and when to do it. Anybody remember Double Dutch? And the sisters, they'd be on the side there, and it's kind of like, yeah, it was. And then they had. I could never get it right. I'd always mess it up. And they know when to jump in, and they'd be in rhythm, and they'd be twirling. That's a working example of chronos. Yeah, you gotta know the right time. It says of the tribe of Issachar, said they had a select few that knew the time and what to do in that time. And whenever a locality is in transition like that, you need folks who know how to read the time. And those reading is not reading at this particular time and where we're at in this locality, but even in our country. It isn't, literacy isn't so much A, B, C, D, Sam, I am, green eggs and ham. Literacy has more to do with being able to read a moment, read a context, and act accordingly. And so unity in times like these. So we need leaders who know how to recognize the context that we're in, the opportunities that exist in this particular locality. And we need leaders who know how to elevate the opportunity so people are aspiring to. These are the times that we're in. And so Dr. King resonated with Mahalia Jackson's timing. Tell him about the dream, Martin. I got you. I have a dream. And it was interesting because I didn't know that whole story until I was at a coaching clinic in Southern California where I heard Coach George Raveling, who at the time was the head coach of University of Southern California, a Washington, D.C. native who maybe stood, 4 or 5 steps from Dr. Martin Luther King when he was given that speech. And Coach Raveling was the recipient of Martin's paper speech. And he said, man, I just heard him speak, and I have a dream. And he said, when I got back home and looked at his paper, he said, I didn't see no I have a dream on the paper. Timing, yeah. And he still has that and has been offered big money to be the recipient of that. Coach Raveling talks about what it felt like, what that meant. And whenever we drove here, I remember because we had the moving truck, and just before as we were pulling off, maybe an hour or two before, the bank representative came to the house, and I just wanted to see. I was like, this may not be the right time for you to be here. We were just, and I had all of this emotion, And it was interesting. We moved to Muncie, and I had to be diligent to seek out the treasures. I think the timing is now where, especially for you Muncie natives, take some time out and with fresh eyes appreciate your locality and celebrate the nuggets that you have here. I remember when we drove Interstate 80, and we came to Indiana and pulled off of I-69 to come down, whatever this is. I still don't remember. It was 332. And I remember where the Kia car lot is now. And I just remember, I was like, wow, this locality is in transition. I hadn't spent even a day here. I just knew. And I didn't know to what degree, but I knew it was in transition. And like I said, I thought that, the initial pull or the initial draw, when that was done, I was done. And I had to seek out, the nuggets that exist here. And what would have been helpful is if I had come to an environment where the citizens were extremely cognizant of the nuggets and the treasures that exist in this locality, and that they celebrated the nuggets and the treasures that existed in my locality. What I came to was folks said, You're not from Muncie. Yeah, clearly. How'd your last name Anderson? You related to? No, I'm not. So why are you here? In other words, they didn't say that, but I said, well, yeah, some people did say it, yeah. But there was enough experiences that Sharice and I had that, in those early months, those early years, I was like, well, maybe we didn't hear God. Maybe, I don't know what. You said because we initially at one point we said, well, the Lord just kind of brought us here, and He brought you to Muncie. But there was a way in which we had heard it so often that it began to seed the idea that, well, maybe not. If you don't feel good, maybe I didn't hear God, or maybe I didn't make the right choice. Maybe. And there's a way in which, if the new economic development model is to attract talent and have people motivated about living, working, playing, and I'm adding dreaming here, we got to get excited about. When you have an economic development model that seeks to attract talent, you have to understand that talent comes with dreams. They come with their own notions of what they want to do. And so while we're cultivating this environment to attract talent, we've got to leave space, leave room for the talent to make their contribution with no strings attached. In other words, we have to create an environment that we're glad to have you. We're looking forward to what you're going to contribute here. And even as much as you do that for outsiders, non-Muncie natives, our young people, you have to encourage them to dream and affirm and validate their dreams and what they come to the table with, and create meaningful opportunities for them to participate in the community. I told you I'm a basketball coach. I had my first team. We were having breakfast together. He said, "Well, Natalie, did you play ball? No, I didn't play ball. I had my first team when I was 15 years old through the Daly City Parks and Recreation Department. My first team, I was 15 years old. My first team was a team full of 8th graders. Talk about having many full circle moments. And when I come back to coaching after being 19 years off, I'm coaching 8th graders and 7th graders. Full circle moment. But it was my first introduction to public leadership is really what it was. Ron Jackson and Ike Elliott. Ike Elliott was a department, he was somebody who had rank in the Daly City Parks and Recreation. He just made his transition this past December. And I remember, because they caught a lot of flack, like, okay, now what is this supposed to do? When the boy is 15 years old. And Ron Jackson, he said, John, you can do it. He says, man, we've watched you grow up in the department playing, football and in the basketball league. He said, you can do this. We need coaches. And rather than spend all this time trying to convince, and whatever you need, we'll help you. That set the seed. I went on to coach in high school, assistant coach in community college, at City of College of San Francisco. I was the Cal State Monterey Bay summer men's coach because, NAIA, the coaches couldn't coach their team in summer. And Coach Bruce Ferruya asked me to coach and step in. And so that was at my core. But more than that, it was my first opportunity at public league. They took a risk to have a 15-year-old boy coach a group of young men who I just had them by 1 year in terms of age. But they saw leadership in me, and they validated me, and they affirmed me, and then they released me. And then I took it on from there. So when we're creating opportunities for folks to dream and participate, we have to prioritize our youth and give them meaningful opportunities to participate, not tokenized opportunities. It's interesting because our youth challenge us to think without limitations. The last question, and I'll end with this. How should we understand unity or calls for unity? That was one of the questions that emerged when we talk about unity in times like these. I first heard this from Bishop Mike. Unity does not mean uniformity. The process, the tools, or the modalities that we employ to arrive at our desired outcomes do not all have to look the same. The diversity that exists in our locality requires that we understand and embrace this. All citizens of our community are not responding to the same thing, to the same degree, at the same time, with the same desire or interest. Unity does not require uniformity. And so you have to recognize, Muncie, Delaware County, there's a lot going on in this little locality. And on some level, by the cities that surround us on either side, Marion or Anderson, Muncie is holding its own and doing it right. Yeah. But it's important that we increase our capacity to be more inclusive, to allow others to dream, and to dream with no strings attached. And to understand that, when we are more inclusive and we have this diversity that's included and contributing in meaningful ways, that we're not all going to do it the same. We talked about, the proverbial seat at the table. Yeah, the proverbial seat at the table. That's an interesting analogy because, that proverbial table or that metaphorical table suggests that if I have a seat at the table, I might just have my own hot sauce in my bag. Yeah, because what's at the table, yeah. Some of you all know. Yeah, some of y'all know what that's about. Yeah. The opportunity or the space to make it your own. And to know that, if I'm eating at the table and I pull out my pepper sauce, it may be foreign to you or be like, oh, okay now. But just let it be. It's not hurting anybody, right? Yeah. I can't enjoy my seat at the table if I can't get this thing right for myself, right? Yeah. The other proverbial table is when we moved to Muncie, I first heard this term. Yeah, we're going to have a pitch-in. Regional difference. The transplant getting this cultural education in real time. And so where we're from, we call it a potluck. Somebody bring their pot. You lucky if it works out. But if we're talking about this metaphorical table, bring what you bring, And I might not be okay with raisins in the potato salad, but, it's an option that's there for me if I want. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So when we talk about inclusive, there needs to be this space that, I'm able to bring my gifting, my dreams, my desires, and allow that to have free expression. I tell my students in sociology, we often hear life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What exactly does that mean? When King is offering his dream, he's appealing to all of America, that we should all have the right to have our humanity expressed. And so I tell students, you've heard life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does that mean to you? And we get a variety of answers. And they say, how about this? Life, the acknowledgement of my humanity. Life, liberty, the liberty to define my humanity as I see fit, so long as it doesn't infringe on yours. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. To pursue my humanity as I've defined it, unencumbered by any of the isms, bigotry, prejudice. so that, so that all of my humanity is expressed. And so as we think about, as we take our cue from this economic development model, let's work on the environment. Let's work on the environment, prioritizing our youth, getting familiar or reacquainted with the nuggets and the jewels and the gems that exist in our community, and having such an awareness of what those nuggets, those gems, those jewels are, that we're able to celebrate it. And so this time when you meet another John and Sharice Anderson and you ask him, well, you're not from here, are you? And you came to Muncie, welcome. We have a lot of great things here. My navigation would have been a lot faster and a lot more enjoyable if I'd encountered that more frequently. There's great things from Muncie, and I just want to encourage all of you: dream big, and dream without limitations.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. And thank you, Dr. Anand, for not letting us miss it. When I skipped over Dr. Anand, I said, no, it's a keynote speaker. We needed to hear that. I almost feel like we should have took notes. We might need a transcription of your speech today to take notes to implement some of the PowerPoints that were shared in the message today. I think I even heard somebody say, preach, Brother John. Okay, yes, she said, yes, preach. Well, now it's time for the MLK Committee recognition with Mrs. Watasha Barnes-Griffith, MLK Dream Team Chair and CEO of the YWCA, and Mr. John Beatty, Liaison to the Concerned Clergy of Muncie, Delaware County.
Thank you, Pastor Jones. Thank you for saying yes to being our Master of Ceremony today. We appreciate you. Greetings, I am Watasha Barnes-Griffin, and I do have the pleasure of serving as the Community Breakfast Planning Chair. So thank you to the Concerned Clergy of Muncie and Delaware County for entrusting that job to myself and to our committee. But before we recognize the committee, I think that there are some special folks in the house, lots of special folks. You all are special folks today. But I hear that it is AKA Founders Day today, and I know that we have some AKAs in the house. So, Ms. Ward, we wanted to recognize you all. And then we recognize that Saturday, January 13th, was Delta Sigma Theta's Founders Day. So we have so thank you. Thank you all for being here with us today. I appreciate you all. And we also want to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors, specifically all of you. We do appreciate you, but we want to recognize our Blue Level sponsors. And so thank you to NAACP, the Muncie unit. We appreciate your financial support. Thank you to First Merchants Bank. Thank you to the City of Muncie. Thank you to Ball State University. Thank you to the Community Foundation of Muncie and Delaware County, Indiana. Thank you to Goler & Goler. Thank you to Muncie Sanitary District, Ivy Tech Community College of Muncie and Henry County, the Indiana Black Expo Muncie Chapter, the Martin Luther King Dream Team, and Muncie Delaware County Black Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your sponsorships. We appreciate your support. Those sponsorships, all of those monies go into what is a community collaborative scholarship account. So Muncie Black Expo, NAACP Muncie, Martin Luther King Dream Team, the Collective Coalition of Concerned Clergy, and the Muncie Delaware County Black Chamber of Commerce have collaborated to ensure that we put a large amount of money into a scholarship fund so that we can award students throughout Delaware County with some robust scholarship opportunities to take that to the next level for their collegiate education. So thank you. And so I just want to say again that thank you for this opportunity to stand here, to put on this event. It's not an easy feat, and we have to have a collaborative group of folks that help to pull it off. And so I'm just going to ask our committee, I'm going to call their name, I'm going to ask them to come to the podium just to join us as we move further in the program. And so I would like to start with Miss Stephanie Arrington. Stephanie Arrington is the Executive Director of Presidential Events and Operations here at Ball State. We're going to ask for Miss Gabby Lloyd. She is the Director of the Multicultural Center here at Ball State. We're going to ask for Miss Rhonda Ward. She's the Director of Diversity and Assistant Director of the Muncie Area Career Center for Muncie Community Schools. We have Jacob Karna. He is the Audiovisual Coordinator for Ball State Student Center. We have Angel Tuttle. She is Assistant Director of Commencement and University Events. We have Miss Nada Hughes, who is the Facilities Director and Coordinator for the L.A. Pittenger Center. We have Mr. Paris McCurdy, Director of Community Diversity and Initiatives. Ms. Yvonne Thompson, who is the Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission for Muncie. Pastor Andre Mitchell, he is the pastor of Deliverance Temple Church here in Muncie. And we have Derica Watson, who is, she works for community engagement for Open Door Health Services and co-founder of Muncie Juneteenth. But she is not here with us today because she is at the Bewley Center preparing for phase 1 for Representation Matters for our youth throughout the community today. So we want to recognize Derica. And then, of course, we cannot leave out Mr. Beatty. John Beatty? Well, okay. John Beatty. He is liaison to the clergy, and he is still giving me directions. So he's saying, make sure I call Pastor Robert up here to the podium because you represent the clergy. Right. So come on up here, Pastor Robert. We want to give a thank you again to the City of Muncie, to Ball State University, and the clergy for allowing us to facilitate this event today. We cannot do it without their support, but we cannot make it successful without all of you being here today. So thank you for being here. And before we pass it on, I would like to say thank you to Brian Ayers with Open Door Health Services and President and CEO of IU Health, Dr. Jeff Bird, for allowing your faculty and staff to be here to provide blood pressure and hypertension checks after we ate all that bacon. But thank you for being here. All right. And so thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stephanie Arrington to move us further.
Thank you, Natasha. Good morning. We would like to take just a few moments to recognize and thank a member of our planning committee who recently retired, who has graciously agreed to be our guest this morning, Charlie Schofield. Can you join us, Charlie? Charlie. In September of 2023, Charlie retired after 34 years of service to Ball State University, where he served as the Facilities Assignment Coordinator here at the L.A. Pittenger Student Center. In his role, Charlie had the opportunity to engage with many students, faculty, staff, and community members to ensure that their event needs were taken care of for events held here, such as this breakfast. Charlie was a valued member of our committee for many years. Charlie, on behalf of the concerned clergy of Muncie, Delaware County, and the MLK Celebration Committee, we would like to present you with a special plaque for your hard work and dedication in the planning of the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Celebration.
Turn it around so they can get a picture. Yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Charlie, we thank you and wish you best in your retirement.
Thank you so much. Mr. Charlie, we appreciate you. Glad we were able to get you here. I don't know what they said to make you want to come back to work. Come back in. You got here late. He did say, at least I don't have to be here at like 5, 6, or 7. I can come in with everyone else. So thank you. Back in the hands of Pastor Jones.
We want to say thank you again to the committee. I don't know if you all have had the opportunity. I've had the opportunity to hear him share this speech at least twice. And if you sit in your seat and you close your eyes, you almost feel like you're there in that moment. So what we're going to have at this moment is Pastor Larry Emmons, Associate Pastor of Greater Second Baptist Church, to come and speak the I Have a Dream speech at this time.
Let the church say. I think it's working. It's on. Y'all hear me? How's everybody? Again, my name is Larry Emmons from Marion, Indiana, the Greater Second Missionary Baptist Church under the leadership of Benny L. Powell Sr. It's just good to be here in the house of the Lord one more time. My wife is looking at me kind of strange that it's not the house of the Lord, but God is everywhere. He's omnipresent. Is that right? No, big round of applause to my good friend John. I don't think it's working. Jasier, come on up here. This is my grandson, Jasier. He's 6 years of age. And he said he's going to be a medical doctor when he grows up. And we adopted him back in 2020. My daughter was tragically taken out of here by a drunk driver. And so we took it upon ourselves to raise him. He's not going to be undervalued, underestimated, and marginalized. All right. I want to thank my wife for being here with me today. She's from Detroit, Michigan. I couldn't find nobody in Marion that wanted me, so I had to go all the way to Detroit, Michigan. All right. I'm a man of many hats. I am one of the associate pastor of Greater Second Baptist Church. I own and operate my own business, Emmons Grooming Shop. So those of you who have little dogs and cats, you can come see me. I fix them right up for you. I own Emmons Transportation Service. And I also work here at Ball State part-time. If you ever rode the shuttle bus around here, the orange loop, the red loop, or the blue loop, we have a transportation driver here. Will you stand? I think I seen Mikey T here. There's Mikey T all the way back there in the back. I want to thank God for my sister and the First Lady being here on today. God has given me a gift, and I want to thank Him for. Where you going, Josiah? We're not done yet. Mr. Julius Anderson, he said he's going to help me with this speech. Come on up here, Mr. Julius Anderson. He put me on the spot. The I Have a Dream speech was given on August 28, 1963. In Washington, D.C., from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. There was over 250,000 people that had come from all over the land and the country. And in that speech, we have the same situation that is going on now, voter depression. They don't want you to hand out water and sandwich to those that are standing in line for over 2 or 3 hours. My daughter just recently moved from Tampa, Florida, because the governor down there don't want you to teach black history, taking certain books off the shelf. And so some of the same situation that Dr. King spoke about is still going on now. Amen. I am happy to join with you today and what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whom symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipational Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been sealed in the flame of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end their long night of captivity. But we must face the tragic fact that 100 years later, the life of the Negroes is still sadly crippled by the management of segregation and by the change of discrimination. 100 years later, Negroes still live on a lonely island of poverty while in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, Negro is still lingering in the corner of the American society while found himself in exile in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize an appalling condition. In a sense, we have come to our nation capital to catch a check. When the architect of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signed in a promissory note to which every American ought to fall heirs. This note was a promise would guarantee all men, yes, black men as well as white men, the inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is ours today that Americans have defaulted on this promissory note, and so far as her citizen or cutter are concerned, instead of honoring this sacred obligation, Americans have given the Negro people a bad check, a check which come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in this great vault of opportunity of this nation. So we have come here today to catch a check that was given us upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hollow spot to remind Americans of the furious urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off, nor to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and the desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. It would be fatal for our nation to overlook the urgency of the moment and to underestimate the determination of the Negro. This sweltering summer of the Negro logistic discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam will now be content. We'll have a rude awakening if our nation return to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until Negroes is granted his or her citizenship right. The whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerge. But there is something I must say to my people today who stands at the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let's not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to disintegrate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic height of meeting physical force with soul force. This marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white peoples, but many of our white brothers and sisters, as evident by their presence here today. They have come to realize that their destiny is tied with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we will always march ahead. There are those that are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is a victim of unspeakable, horrible police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue or travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels and the highways and in the hotels in the city. We can never be satisfied as long as a Negro basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. No, we will never be satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. I'm not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulation. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from an area where your quest for freedom left you staggering by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veteran of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to Georgia. Go back to the slums and the ghettos of the northern city, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let's not wallow in the valley of despair. And I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow. I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold the truth to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream today that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners one day be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream today that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, a state sweltering with the heat of oppression, will one day be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream today that one day my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today that one day, right there down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor lip drifting with the words of interproposition and nullification. One day, right there down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands together with little white boys and white girls and be able to walk together as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today that one day every valley will be exalted, every hill and mountain will be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all the flesh shall see it together. This is my hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we'll be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a storm of hope. With this faith, we'll be able to struggle together, go to jail together, stand up for freedom together, knowing that one day all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my father died, land of the pilgrim pride. From every mountainside, let freedom reign. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom reign from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom reign from the mighty mountain of New York City. Let freedom reign from the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom reign from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom reign from the curvy peak of California. But not only that, let freedom reign from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom reign from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. And when we do that, we will allow freedom to reign from every city and every state, from every hamlet and every village. We'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black man and white man, Jews and Gentile, Protestant and Catholic, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual song, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Gets better and better every year. Every year. Very encouraging, very inspiring.
very impactful and amazing to remember and be able to quote. So thank you again, Pastor Emmons. At this time, we're going to have the history of the Black National Anthem with Gabrielle Lloyd, Director of the Multicultural Center, after which the Black National Anthem from Minister Willisha Scaife of Union Missionary Baptist Church.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Gabby Lloyd, and I serve as the director of the Multicultural Center here at Ball State. But before we get started, this was in the bathroom, so if you're missing a black and brown wristlet, we have it up in front. Cool. So often referred to as the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing was a hymn written as a poem by NAACP leader James Weldon Johnson in 1900. His brother, John Roseman Johnson, composed the music for the lyrics. A choir of 500 schoolchildren at the segregated Stanton School, where James Weldon Johnson was principal, first performed the song in public in Jacksonville, Florida, to celebrate President Abraham Lincoln's birthday. At the turn of the 20th century, Johnson's lyrics eloquently captured the solemn yet hopeful appeal for the liberty of Black Americans. Set against the religious invocation of God and the promise of freedom, the song was later adopted by the NAACP and prominently used as a rallying cry during the Civil Rights Movement. But ultimately, today, we use it in times like these.
Okay, I'm one of those people whose husband has to say, just do what you're supposed to do when you get up there. Don't do anything else. So he's like, baby, just don't. But I do want to encourage us. I'm going to do it. This is what this is. I just want to encourage us to learn all of the words. Even if you don't learn them, take the time to read all of the verses of this great song. It is powerful. The fourth verse is my favorite. I won't do that today. But it really is important that we do that. I mean, if you're only going to do this once a year, read it all. Read it all. I'm going to ask you to stand. Now, let's sing this with passion, not merely as the end of our program, but as the beginning of our recommitment to everything this song represents. So we're going to sing it together. I'm just going to start it, and then we're going to sing it together, okay? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Amen.
I do want to let Pastor Scaife know it does say final remarks for me, so if I say something that's in the program. So I will take a few final remarks and then we will pray. So the first final remark is Remember, this is the first part of our day. We do have an evening service at 6 p.m. at Union Missionary Baptist Church. We're asking the pastors to show up at 5:30, and you all are invited to that. The other remark I would like to make is something of history, that the day that this I Have a Dream speech was given, the FBI noted Martin Luther King as the most dangerous Negro in America. And just 5 years later, he was assassinated and killed at the tender age of 39 years old. But I want to say that today, we are the most dangerous dreamers in America. Amen. And we too are assassinators, but we will assassinate injustice, we will assassinate hatred, we will assassinate bigotry and anything that stops us from dreaming. Amen. Let's bow our heads. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this time. We thank you for what this man meant, but not just this man, the movement. And the movement continues, and we will march on until victory is won. And we thank you that victory is growing like a tree in Muncie, Indiana. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you.